I'm going to change to something a little different now. Read a short passage from a short story that I am working on currently. It doesn't have a name, so I'll simply begin at the beginning. Somewhere in the middle of his 50th year, Gilbert Porter's wife walked out on him. The night he discovered she was gone, he'd come home from the small print shop he managed to find all her beautiful dresses, her snappy suits, frilly blouses, party dresses, and diaphanous negligees, stripped from the closet, leaving it mostly bare since his own wardrobe consisted of 2 drab suits and a topcoat. Then, at 2 o'clock in the morning, she had called and uttered 2 sentences into the receiver before hanging up. "Goodbye, Gilbert. After much research, I finally found someone who can make me scream." Not long after, Gilbert began periodically to live as much in the past as the present. It started innocently enough. Each night, he would dream of a different ex-girlfriend from his premarital past. The first, an auburn-haired young lady from Utah with whom he had picnicked in Griffith Park when he was in college. He saw her the way she appeared in an old photograph which had long been lost or discarded. Ariana dressed in a white ankle-length skirt printed with colorful flowers. A dark top stretched across those breasts he could not stop ogling, looking absent-minded while dismembering a flower. Another night it was his cousin Luanda, an earlier object of his desire. She had visited the Porter family in California from her native Nebraska. There had been a makeshift swimming pool on the farm, hastily scooped out by a bulldozer and slathered over, in equal haste, with cement. It had sloping sides. In the dream, as in his memory, 12-year-old Gilbert had swum across the pool underwater. His 13-year-old cousin was leaning back against the pool's edge, while her long, perfect legs, relaxed and untethered in the water, drifted casually apart. When he opened his eyes as he neared those gently floating limbs, the soft tendrils of hair poking through the crotch of her badly frayed swimsuit captured his full attention. There were others, and on each occasion his erotic dream was rewarded with the consummation he had so obviously wished for but been denied in the past. A wet spot on the front of his pajama bottoms furnished the proof. As he came to think of it later, the thread uniting each of these dreams was that these were not women he had slept with in the past, but rather women he had lusted after but failed to sleep with. He was dreaming about failures, but past failures transformed into successes through the medium of dreaming. For he never again dreamed of the same woman. An obsession had been erased, and thus particular moments in his personal history had been reversed. Before long, Gilbert began to have similar daydreams during waking hours and with equal success. This was one of the principal reasons Gilbert stayed home from work more and more often, changing a sad and unsatisfactory outcome in the past seemed a more important use of his time. After a few weeks, Gilbert walked away from his office 1 hour before quitting time and never came back. Before many months had elapsed, Gilbert seemed to go deeper into the past. He would either lie in bed dreaming or be stretched out on the couch, gathering wool, as the old saying had it. When he got hungry, and that was not often, he would open a tin of tuna from the cupboard or nibble on crackers he also found there. Since he had never formally retired, he had no pension, but his lifelong habit of pinching pennies, another thing that annoyed his wife, had provided a small nest egg. After a while, calls from co-workers, clients, and bosses diminished to a trickle, then stopped. A final paycheck arrived in the mail and lay on the coffee table, unopened. Of course, Gilbert was prompted eventually to seek sunshine, fresh air, and groceries. And on that very first excursion outdoors, he passed a second-hand bookstore, some of whose volumes were set out on the street. He stopped a moment to browse. In the old days, he'd read mysteries, whodunits, police procedurals, the occasional tale of international intrigue and daring do, rarely history. But he spotted a book by A.J.P. Taylor whose cover and title intrigued him. That night, curled up on the divan, a brandy in front of him, ignoring the images that flashed noiselessly across the television screen, he began to read. He came across a sentence that caused him to stop and think. The revolutions of 1848 were a turning point in history, where history failed to make the turn. This jolted him. He looked up and stared at the wall above the TV screen. He read the sentence again, a third time. Then he stared at the wall until it was time to go to bed. His mind had been seized by that sentence, not unlike how it had fixated on lost loves during weeks past. What Gilbert thought about most during those transported moments was how his recent dreams had moved failed outcomes from the past into the completed satisfactorily column. It had worked with his personal history. Why not with broader historical events as well? As he drew on his pajamas, his body began to tremble with the import of this. That meant that he could intervene in history, did it not? That he could change things. And if he had been privileged with the knowledge that he could change things, didn't that mean that he should? From that point on, Gilbert felt the tug of a mission. He no longer imagined long-ago girlfriends where his objectives had been thwarted. That past had been transformed and laid to rest. There were things of greater importance now to change. Thank you.